beg leave to hand it up. Might I also hand up FF12 as well, because we'll make reference to it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Might Ambassador Machila be sworn in? Thank you.
Please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
My name is Jerry Matthews. My name is Jerry Matthews Machila.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed affirmation?
No objection.
Do you solemnly swear that all the evidence that you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, I truly affirm.
I truly affirm.
Thank you very much. You may sit. Thank you. You may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Machila, could you would have before you Exhibit FF11.
Yes.
It's a presentation file, and if you open it under the divider marked number 1.
Well, Ms. Norman, should we not enter this into the record first?
Oh, yes, yes, thank you, Chair.
The file containing the affidavit of Mr. Jerry Matthews Machila will be marked as Exhibit FF11.
Thank you. As Chairperson pleases. Then under 1, that you will see there is an affidavit that has your name on it. Is that the affidavit that you prepared for the Commission?
Yes, ma'am.
And then could you please turn to page 6 of that bundle? There is a signature there, and also a stamp from the South African Police Service. Is that your signature that appears on that page?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And are the contents of this affidavit true and correct?
It is true, ma'am, but I wanted to make some, if possible, some corrections. If you
Yes. Would you please just identify those with the Chairperson?
Chair, I would like to refer to FF4. Is that 4?
Sorry?
Sorry.
Exhibit FF?
No, JMM4.
Oh, okay.
Exhibit
Page 4.
1.
Or is it
JMM4.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
She will refer to pages when she asks you questions without mentioning the initials on the page numbers, so don't get confused when she does that. She will just focus on the numbers without the letters. So, for example, when she says page 4, she will be meaning JMM4. But you were right to say JMM4 because that's what's written there.
Thanks, Chair.
Yes, okay, all right. So,
Chair,
yes.
the first correction I wanted to make is on paragraph A, on
Yes.
4,
Yes.
is the name of the spokesperson of DERCO. It is
Yes.
Mr. Tleisen Munyela. Now, there it is Mr. Tleiso Munyelato. So I wanted to
Yes.
change that to Mr. Tleisen Munyela. That is the first correction I wanted to make sure.
Yes.
And after Munyela, I wanted to strike off that 2. So it's Munyela, and you strike the first 2. Tleisen Munyela to share. So that's the second correction. Chair, the third correction.
I'm sorry, I think the one that you refer to as the second is the one I thought was the first. I'm now looking for where the first is.
Oh, if it is the first, then when you say Clayson Munyela, then
Oh,
if you
I
strike
think
that
the one that I picked up, which I thought you said was the first, is the one that says Mr. Clayson Monyelato. That's not the first one.
no, that is the one. First is
Oh, that's the
Clayson,
one.
is N after S-O, Clayson,
Yes.
and then Munyela.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
TO should not be there.
That's right.
And there should be an N after SO in Clayson.
Right, Chair.
Yes, that is the first one.
No, first is the first and the second, in that way.
Oh, or first and second,
Yeah.
okay, yes.
I wanted to be precise.
Yes, no, you are precise.
Chair,
Yes,
the third correction is on B. The name of the minister
yes,
is not appropriately spelled. Her name is Minister Maida Ngwana Mashabane. So there it is Minister Ngwana Mashabane Maide.
oh, yes.
So it's to correct that, Chair, if the Chair allows me.
Yes, that was,
It's a typo error.
was that your typist? Or
it's,
I hope it wasn't the commission.
Maybe, Chair, it was a commission. I don't want to be direct, but
Yes.
maybe it's a commission
The
typist.
typist is sitting right behind me.
But Chair, please, it is not his problem. I should have edited that myself.
Yes,
So
okay,
it has
no,
nothing to do
that's-
with him, so please save him.
Okay, yes,
And the third correction is the name of DDG Mahwai, then DDG HR. Chair, I want to recall that he was not present in the said meeting with the minister.
oh, okay,
So if we can strike it off, it
Yes.
was Ambassador Golwani, then State of Protocol, and Mr. Clayson Monyela. So DDG Mahwai was not there, and I apologize, Chair. So we can strike him off.
yes,
And then, Chair, on
page two,
Page 2.
page 2,
okay,
B3, Roman 3.
yes,
It says the nature of the visit state, then there is a V there. It is not that, Chair.
Yes.
It's supposed to be the nature of the state
state,
visits, then semicolon.
yes,
Then it's a state visit,
yes,
official visit, and then on 4 can be a summit or private. So it's
Yeah.
4 categories of visits.
yeah, no, but the typing skills were very poor here.
We'll improve with the Chair as time goes on. So that is so it's
Yeah, it should be state visit,
Official visit.
official visit,
Is it during the summit when the president come or a private visit? So
Yes.
it's 4 type of visit because they
Yes.
got various
Yes.
what you call. So that is
Yes.
the correction,
Yes.
and I wanted the Chair to understand it that way.
yes,
It
no,
was-
that's fine, yes,
And then the second one, Chair, is the note the bars there.
yes,
You know, from Roman 4 to Roman 6
yes.
on that B.
I'm sorry, are you still on the same B Roman figures?
B, yes, Roman figure
Yes.
4, 5,
Yes.
6, 7.
Yes,
And then Roman figure 1, 2, 3, 4. So, Chair, you may have 2 note verbals.
yes,
The first one just asking for the visit.
yes,
Then when the number 1 or the princess yes, when the details come, because of security, we have a note verbal which now ask about the lending.
Yes.
Let's ask about,
The
because you have to
details.
protect the security of the guest.
yes, okay,
And normally at that point, security services take over
okay,
because it's
okay.
less, because of the current environment in which you are. You know, there are so many
Yes.
threats to heads of state.
Yes,
And they got
yes,
different classification.
yeah,
So sometime at that detailed level, is security services taking over. So
Okay.
there may be interaction between security services
and DERCO,
among themselves and one person in DERCO.
okay,
So because it's the details now of
Okay.
the movement
Okay.
of the chief guest. I just wanted to
Yes.
make that understanding that
Yes.
we may be talking here about two note verbal. The first
Yes.
with triggers,
Yes.
and the second one, the details
The
now.
details, yeah.
When you ask for a flight path,
Yes.
landing, and all
Okay.
those.
Okay.
Thank-
Okay.
Chair, thanks. Those were the few changes that,
That you picked up.
I wanted to indulge you,
Yes.
Chair. Thanks.
Yes, she will make arrangements afterwards
Yes.
for a supplementary affidavit which will deal with this to say, in this affidavit, I've picked up the foreign corrections. This is how it should have been. Basically, what you have told us to be put in an affidavit form. Okay, no,
Thanks, Chair.
that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Thank you. Ambassador, can I please take you to page 8? That's where your profile appears.
Right.
Yes. Could you just summarize? You've started, it starts from 20, in fact, it starts from 2006. Maybe you should start from page 7, because that's where you start from 2001, 2006, and then take us through your career and where you've served the country as an ambassador in various states throughout the world.
Chair, I had two lives. There was a life before 1994, where I served the current ruling party as their envoy in foreign
Yes.
countries. In Sweden, where we run the office to mobilize international support, solidarity, and the resources to support the struggles in South Africa. And then the then president of the ANC, Oliver Tambo, then moved me from Sweden to Japan, Tokyo, to open up the first ANC office in North Pacific, dealing with Japan, South Korea, China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, all those countries in the North Pacific. Again, for the same reasons,
Yes.
to mobilize support for the ANC, mobilize material support to conduct the struggles, to ask the countries to implement sanctions, and generally speaking, to make people conscious about the brutalities of apartheid. And then, Chair, in that context, I received President Mandela twice in Japan, in 1990 when he was released, and 1991. And after the ruling party was unbanned, I used to come home temporarily. We were given a week to come home and back into exile, or 3 weeks to go back into exile. That torturous period of your life where you taste home, then you go back into exile. But finally, Chair, I came back after voting in Tokyo. I voted in Tokyo,
In 1994.
1994.
Yes.
Then I came home with my family, and then work came into DERCO, 1st of August 1994. We were 17 of us who were former ANC envoys abroad, called chief representative, who were then moved to the then Department of Foreign Affairs as deputy directors. So that's how I was inducted, and that was my second life now. This time around, serving a democratic South Africa. And then, Chair, I was then posted to India as the first African High Commissioner to India to open up the embassy there
Yes.
in India until 1999. Came home, get promoted to a chief director, and served in the office of the Director General at that time. And in 2001, I was then posted to Belgium, to the European Union, as an envoy there, but also covering the Grand Duke of Luxembourg. So it was both bilateral, Belgium, South Africa, Luxembourg, South Africa, and multilateral with the European Union. And part of that was because at that time, the European Union was the biggest trading partner of South Africa. Close to 60% of our trade was with the European Union. And there were a number of agreements to be negotiated with the European Union for market access of our products. like wines and spirit. We were a mid-sized marketing of wines and spirit to the European Union in order to take up the more quotas. And part of that was because of job creations in the wine industry, but also because of the foreign exchange. So we managed to get additional quota from 21 to 51 million liters of wine. And then the auto, selling of the cars. Because, Chair, you recall, the new democracy, the local content of our cars there was about 5-6%. But we're revving up local content. We're producing more parts in South Africa. And once they reach 66%, 67% local content, that threshold, in terms of the rules of origin, we can say is my car. So by the time we reach that threshold of 66% of content of the cars, we can then send them duty-free to the European Union. So we have to have that agreement. And the third one was on the science and technology agreement, because we're a new democracy, obsolete technologies. You have to go and mobilize new technologies for the input into manufacturing, in particular, telecommunication and other systems, health, education. So we then had an agreement with the European Union on science and research. So for every scientist they send here, we send scientists to European Union. In that case, we create a capacity for manufacturing. But the sum total of all this, Chair, was that you see a growth in terms of the content of trade. From mineral resources, from raw material, you see the content increases. So that was part of responsibility. But also because we used to get a grant, an envelope, European Development Fund, in the region of about 130 million euros, free grants to help South Africa. And that fund was very necessary for us because, you recall, Chair, we're still developing the capacity of local government, provincial government, even national government department in terms of policy, system, procedures. It was a period where this new democracy was building systems to make sure that we can function efficiently. At the same time, establishing institutions like human rights and others for accountability purposes to make sure that there is a system of accountability so the executive can be held accountable. So these were very nascent, very fragile, very new systems. So you needed grants that doesn't burden the fiscus in that area of work, but also to expose bureaucrats, officials to those countries to go and learn, to go and study how other countries have dealt with these issues. The issue here, Chair, was to make sure that as this new democracy take roots in the parliament, in the executive, in bureaucracy, at all levels of government, there is a capacity being created because it does take time. More so it was in the context of transformation, racial issues, perceptions issues, movement of people from rural to urban, new departments, new officials, new acquaintances, governance. So it was a period where there was so much influx. So you needed that type of envelope from European Union, which could be used to capacitate. Yes. For example, we got funds in 2003 for Limpopo to train local government officials to know what it is to be a local government, to be MEC, to be a mayor, to be MLA, how to respond to the people's things, how you study legislations, etc., etc. So that was that period. So part of our responsibility, Chair, was to make sure that that money continues to flow. Chair was given extension by President Begi. President Mandela was when I was in India. Now President Begi is in charge. So he sent me to Brussels. So he gave me 1 year extension because at that time I was assisting with the Congolese issue. You recall, there was a Sun City process where South Africa was helping the Congolese to find peace. And now, most of them were based in Brussels, in Belgium. So I have to make sure that they are assisted to go to Sun City so that the process is as exclusive as possible, transparent, so that at the end of the day, Congolese at home abroad can own up to the process. And that is what Congo did. So for this reason, President Beki gave me an extension. So I came back in 2006. When I came back to 2006, Chair, I was then given various responsibilities in government. I was a DDG Asia Middle East.
Yes.
And part of that was because perhaps President Beki thought I know Asia since I went there in 1988. And I dealt with those countries in the area. But part of this was because part of my career was to develop a strategy for government, a policy for government. So then we have to develop the strategy for India, strategy for China, strategy for the Gulf, strategy for Japan. How do we access those markets? And we have a role to play because we saw a huge potential in Asia and Middle East. At that time, Chair, the trade between South Africa and Asia and Middle East was not that pronounced, but we thought we can do better. And so over a period of time, like now, you see the biggest market of South Africa, it's no longer Europe anymore, it's Asia and Middle East. Almost 880 billion rand, close to 1 trillion, when the EU is almost half of that. So you could see that change, or the expansion of South African foreign policy from Europe, Asia, Middle East, Latin America, and Africa have borne fruits for the economy. So that was part of our responsibility to do. But at the same time, we had to deal with BRICS formation. I developed the BRICS strategy, what the government should do in the BRICS. It was IPSA focal point, India, Brazil. And then we have the multilateral engagement. So you have South Africa, Africa, and China. It's called FOCAC. It was a focal point of that. How do we as South Africa and Africa deal with China? Then you have Japan, Africa, it's called TICAD. I was a focal point for TICAD. India, Africa was focal point for India, Africa. So we have these plurilateral arrangements where Africa was trying to access this huge emerging market going forward. At the same time, Chair, I was also made the focal point for BRICS because these were huge emerging economies that were accounting for a sizable percentage of the global market. So those were part of my peace jobs after I came back.
Yes. In your second life. In your second life.
In my second life, Chair.
Yeah. And then you became DG of the Department of Foreign Affairs.
No, before that, Chair. Then I
Yes.
was sent by President Zuma now. Now, government have changed to Switzerland as the South African ambassador of the United Nations in Geneva. UN have two major centers. It's the UN in Geneva and the UN in New York. Now, Geneva has a lot of UN agencies like World Health Organization, World Intellectual Property Organization, WTO, Human Rights Council, IPO. Is a whole huge of what I call heavy lifters of the UN are in Geneva. So I was sent the chair to be South African permanent representative at the United Nations in Geneva. Human rights, ILO, and all those entities. And in that capacity, I was then elected to chair the ministerial board of ILO, to make the ILO, to help the ILO to deal with the issues, especially of domestic workers, farm workers. So that was part of my responsibility. Then, Chair, 2 years into 18 months of the process, I applied for a job to be the DG of DERCO. When that did come, then it means I have to leave Geneva and come back here to be the DG. Yes. So I served 5 years as a DG.
And you started being DG from which year?
2011.
2011.
To 31st of May, 2016.
Okay.
It's a 5-year contract.
Thank you.
At the end, then I was sent to where I am today,
Yes.
in New York at the United Nations.
Yes.
That's my short life in the
Yes.
new life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Could you just in summary then, we don't know what ambassadors do, but what we know is that when you go overseas and you go to to meet the ambassador, you get entertained, taken to lunch. But exactly what
Taken
is
to?
To lunch? Yeah, we've had very kind ambassadors in New York. I hope you are that kind. But
So I think advocates are quite lucky.
yes.
I'm not sure, Chair.
Yeah. But in summary, what is it that ambassadors are supposed to do really for the country when they are posted elsewhere in the world?
Chair, ambassadors are called plenipotentiary and extraordinary. In other words, they are the representative of the heads of state, where the head of state, through a letter of credentials, letter of credence, says to a counterpart in the receiving state, let me say in Belgium, I am sending Jerry Magila as my trusted person. So please accredit him to do the job there. If you have any sensitive issue you want to communicate to me, that's my person.
That's my representative.
That's my representative.
Yes.
So you are the ears, the eyes, and the spokesperson of the heads of state, and you represent all government departments. That's why you fly the flag in your car. The car has your flag of the country. And that's why in your house, we call it the residence, there is a flag of the republic there.
Yes,
In
yes.
your office. That's why in your house, you have the heads of state photo there.
Yes.
The minister's photo there.
Yes.
In your office, you have them there.
Yes.
Because you are regarded as a representative of the head of state.
And that's why I guess you are referred to as His Excellency. Does that come
Precisely.
in?
Excellency Bruce Kolwane, yeah.
Yes, yes.
That's why you are His Excellency. Very few people have this title, His Excellency.
Yes, yes. So, but you have made a very important point to which I think you were, Ms. Norman was still going to come. You say the head of state is saying to the receiving head of state,
Yeah.
this is my trusted representative.
Precisely.
And therefore, I take it that a person occupying the position of ambassador must have a high degree of integrity. Is that correct?
Integrity, knowledge, expertise,
Yes.
and a trust of the head of
The
state.
trust of the head of state.
Because that's why when you come there, Chair, that letter from your president, you take it to the head of state. You meet the head of state,
Yeah, face to face.
and you hand it over to the head of state.
Yes.
Who opens it, read it, and then you sit down with the head of state. What is a king, the majesty, the president, you sit down and then you discuss the relationship.
Yes,
They
yes.
will ask you, thank you very much, please convey my regards to President Ramaphosa.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm glad that they send you here. What is your task? Then you start to explain your task.
Yes, yes.
Then they say, well, we are very happy for this relationship. We wish you well. And then from time to time, you meet that head of state, of course.
Yes,
If there are sensitive issues,
Yes.
because already presented, you go to meet that head of state.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that point, Ambassador, maybe could you please, may I refer you to Exhibit FF12? Don't close the one that you're looking at, but it's just a small document next to you, FF12, also in a presentation file.
FF12.
Yes. Yes, that one, the one on your left-hand side. Could you just turn it over?
I think just raise the one in your hand and show it to him.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. FF12. Now that you mentioned to the chairperson the letters that a person would receive, which the person must take to the head of state in the country where one is deployed. This FF12, Mr. Chairman, these are documents that have been received from the Director General, Dr. Lubisi, from the Office of the President.
Yes.
Yes. Could I just ask you to turn to page 3 of that document?
Yes.
Yes. This, for instance, is a president's minute that would relate to Ambassador Kolwane, because
Yes.
this is the one that we had requested.
Right.
Yes. Could you turn to, if you, at page 3, what does that president minute say? It's president minute number 237.
Chair, that minute is a procedural minute in which the minister, I think it was Ngwana Mashabane, says to the president, they have checked, and according to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Ambassador Kolwane has been appointed to the Kingdom of Netherlands. And that's what it means.
Yes.
Actually, just to reflect, it seems to be
The
a
president
president's
minister.
minute that he normally, in terms of the Constitution, has to have for certain types of decisions that he
Yes.
must take, and it's got to be countersigned by the relevant minister. And so where he says, "I hereby appoint," I think it is the president
president.
speaking.
What-
And then the minister, as the relevant minister, just signs.
What happens, the Chair, is that
Yes,
the president shall have applied his mind on the appointment of an ambassador. In this case,
Yes.
His Excellency Ambassador Kolwane.
yes,
Then the president advised the minister. The minister received this letter. Then the minister will come to the director general and say, DG, the president have applied his mind and has appointed Ambassador Kolwane to be his envoy to Netherlands. Start the process, facilitate his going there.
yes, okay.
So the minister will then bring this letter to me, confirming the concurrence or the decision of the president. Then I then call in the ambassador concerned and inform the ambassador about the
Appointment.
as a designate. And then at that time, we do normal facilitation processes. So it triggers in preparation for the ambassador. We have to
Yes.
prepare him now.
Yes, yeah,
It may include a training to make sure that certain skills are updated, etc. At this point, by the way, Ambassador Kolwane was already an ambassador.
yes,
Yeah, from Spain. He was ambassador to Spain, so it's not a
Yes.
new one. But you need to refresh people.
yes.
You know, you need to wear the
Yes.
machine, the system.
Yes, yes,
And then the second part, you are triggering in the security clearances. So the state security come in, and then you prepare the ambassador for going to take over the tour of duty.
Yes.
So that letter triggers all those preparations.
yes, okay,
Thank you.
thank
And
you.
thank you. And then at page 4, then that will be a letter from the President of South Africa to His Majesty King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands.
Right. That is the letter
Yes.
I said the Excellency Kolwane carries with him in this case.
Yes.
Then the protocol that side made an arrangement for him to go and see the Majesty at the Majesty's court. And then the Majesty receives him. Then he presents this letter from our heads of state. She receives it, looks through it, welcomes him to the Netherlands, and then have a chat over a cup of coffee, arranged by protocol. It's just small ceremony. Of course, some people make it very elaborate ceremonies, going there by a horse cart, Queen's cart. I don't know how Ambassador Kolwane went there, but some
Yeah.
have a very elaborate thing. You know, you go into the Queen's
Yeah.
horses.
Yeah,
You know, those who go to the Majesties. But some of us who have not gone there, it's just a small thing. But the Majesties one, sometimes they make it very elaborate, very plump. And then you have that discussion with the Majesty, in which the Majesty welcomes you and asks you to thank the heads of state. But at the same time, it might be a letter recalling the one who was there before you, so that it's not you and somebody else. So,
Yes.
So this is the letter, Chair, that the head of mission designate will call. At that point, it's no longer designate. After the Majesty says yes, the designate goes about, then he becomes the ambassador extraordinary, plenipotentiary.
okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I also ask that at this stage, this be admitted as Exhibit FF12, which is the documentation from the presidency. Thank you.
I'm sorry, just repeat that.
As Exhibit FF12, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Then
We go to what page?
I was just asking that this be admitted as exhibit, Mr. Chairman. The FF12.
Oh, we
Yes, yes.
had not done that.
We had not, yes, we had not done
Yes,
this. Yes.
the file containing a letter from Dr. Cassius Libisi, Director General and President's Secretary to the Cabinet, addressed to Mr. Peter Pedler, will be marked Exhibit FF12.
As the chair pleases. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Can we go back now to Exhibit FF11, which has your affidavit?
Yes, ma'am.
We've covered paragraphs 1 up to 5 with the process that you've already testified to. Could you then tell the chairperson, you were asked by the commission, is that correct, to answer certain questions? One of the questions that you were asked was...
Well, I'm sorry, before that,
Yes.
I saw that, Ambassador, you took an affirmation and not an oath, but I see that this is in oath form. Is that fine with you? Your statement, affidavit?
Yes, it's an oath.
It is
form.
fine. Is it fine?
Well, Chair, I was asked, is it oath or
Affirmation?
affirmation?
Yes.
I took oath, then she
Yes.
says, if you're not President Christian or religious, then affirmation.
Yes.
I thought it's the same thing.
Yeah, yes.
But Chair, if it doesn't mean the same thing, I will stay with the oath.
Okay, you have no problem.
I don't have a problem
Okay,
with the oath.
no, that's fine.
I
That's
just
fine.
thought maybe I have a leeway to move either way, but it
Yeah,
seems
no, that's fine.
I
I
have to
just
be very
want-
consistent.
I was just wondering whether there was a mistake. So, okay, no, that's in order then.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Then you were asked just to give a summary of what is the process that DERCO would engage in when there is a request from a foreign country for lending in South Africa. And then you deal with that process in paragraph 5. Could you just briefly tell the chairperson what that process is?
Chairperson, once the DERCO, through bilateral desk, receive a note verbal from the resident mission foreign in the country, the bilateral desk notifies the protocol of the receipt of that note. And then in the note, we expect them to indicate the purpose of the request, the timing of the request, and the places.
I guess the purpose of the visit.
Of the visit, yes.
And the time when the visit is proposed to happen.
That's right.
Yes.
And the nature, is it state, official, is it working, or is private? So once that part has been agreed upon, we have to find if the head of state, our head of state is okay with the request, especially the timing, because of scheduling issues. And once we are certain that indeed the president is okay with this type of visit and is affirmed, then the preparations starts. And part of that preparations may entail convening interdepartmental meetings to say, here is a request from country A for this kind of visit, and our president have consented to this visit. So we then develop content, what should be achieved, will be any agreements to be signed, what should be the outcome of the visit. And then the protocol look into the facilitation of the visit, the place of the visit, where will going to be the arrival of the visit, what movements will entail, the venues, the hotel, the transportation. There's a protocol to arrange transportation, how many people will be coming there. So we will then prepare a submission to the minister and to the president to say, we think the best way of making sure that this is a success, we need to address the following issues. Economic diplomacy, let's talk about market access, let's talk about this, technology, security, issues of Africa. So we go through all these issues to make sure that the visit is worth, because it's costly. It's costly, so you make sure that it's money well spent. But also because you're building relationship, you want to make sure that the ceremonial issues by protocol is up to mark, to leave a lasting impression to your guest, that you are ready to strengthen relations, to expand the relationship. So protocol will go into those ceremonial issues like, is it going to be a dinner, lunch, is it going to be a breakfast, will be a visit maybe to a museum or to the Capital of Mankind, or a project, something that is long-lasting for the heads of a state. And then the second part, protocol, will then also deal with the, maybe in a separate note verbal, when we know the arrival, the number of guests in the plane, and the date of arrival. Then the protocols and the defense intelligence services, then is the arrival. Are you going to have a guard of honor at the airport or not? For instance, if it is a private visit, you don't have to have that. But then, and where are we going to mount the ceremonial welcome by our military personnel? Where will be the 21 guns to be fired, taking salute, honor? So that is a protocol. It's a very, very intricate and very delicate issue, because if something slips there, the whole content is gone. So ceremonial part is what market the country. That's first impression, lasting impression. Of course, content is also very important, but you cannot underestimate the impact of properly arranged ceremonial. So that's where the protocol is, to make sure that that pump. So both protocol, content as well. Now, if, for instance, it's going to be at a military base or at the airport, some heads of states arrive at Otia because of the size of the aircraft. This 747, mostly they arrive there. Some at Waterkloof Air Base, etc., etc. There's a different process now, which needs now the security and the protocol to work on. Once all of us have gone through our internal processes, example, the defense will assess the availability of the facility, the condition of the facility, and work everything internally. And then they say to DERCO, no, we don't think our facility is available, or it is available. And then our role is to notify the requesting mission that yes, let's go ahead, or please not at this one. But that is the defense to decide, because DERCO doesn't have airports. Defense will then agree. So once the defense agrees, they apply their mind, going through the internal processes, then we trigger the preparation, the arrival ceremony, all those kind of things happens. So that is what normally happens.
Yes.
But if, Chair, size of aircraft is like these big 747s, we then say no land at Otia, because our runway doesn't handle that.
At OR Tambo International Airport.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm.
Then we trick arrangements there. Understand it's a civilian airport, so we make an arrangements there. If it's Cape Town Airport. It is easier for us when it is Waterkloof, because it's exclusive.
Yes.
But not many lands there with big
Yes.
aircrafts. So it's a decision that we normally take together. If it is at OR Tambo, then AXA kicks in. So we go with AXA, Home Affairs, and relevant
Yes.
department, what is going to happen there. If it is Cape Town, it's going to be international part or domestic part. Like, for instance, President Obama did go to Cape Town. So we then make arrangements there. If it's a summit, it's a number of heads of state, the protocol, security may say, okay, so many of them lands at OR Tambo, so many Waterkloof, maybe so many at Lansaria. They will distribute them and create necessary system mechanism to make sure that wherever they land, they're all welcome to South Africa.
Yes.
So that is in short, without compromising security. There's a lot of security issues that, Chair, you may save me from not saying them, understanding that we still have to protect the Republic.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And then coming to the issue that we're dealing with, which is the Waterkloof landing of Jet Airways. When did you become aware of that landing for the very first time?
Chair, I came aware of that through the news.
Or are you asking the actual landing or the proposed visit prior to the landing?
Yes, yes. No,
Yeah.
in fact, I think
The request.
The request.
Yeah.
When did you, for the first time, become aware of the request that Jet Airways wanted to land at the Waterkloof?
It was after the arrival.
After the arrival
After
of the
effect,
aircraft?
Yeah, when the news and social media were
Yes.
busy, then
Yeah.
we looked through this.
Yes. Before that, you didn't know anything?
No, I was not in the picture. Chair.
Yes. And normally you would not get involved?
Normally, I will get involved after interdepartmental meeting.
Yes.
I normally get involved if it's a heads of state. And I've been advised that the note verbal clearly indicates it's a head of state coming.
Yes.
And then in that case, I will then confirm with the Chief of State Protocol and the DDG of that area.
Yes.
If it is from Americas, DDG of America, Europe, because that DDG will then convene interdepartmental meeting.
Yes.
They start preparations.
Yes.
And they will come to report to me, then I make the ministers aware.
Yes.
But also we have a forum called the DG Forum, where I convene the DDGs, and we collectively discuss this
Yes, and
issue
that's DDGs of your department?
of my department.
Yes.
To say it's like this, and then of course we have interdepartmental
Meetings.
processes where they send department official at the appropriate level where the issue can be discussed. And sometimes the president may say, no, look, I want ministerial committee on this issue. So a few ministers will be put together to do it. But in normal circumstances, the Nova Bell comes, then I request the DDG responsible for that region to start the preparations, the content, call other colleagues, DTI, Home Affairs. Defense is always, intelligence services are always part of the process because you need to make sure that the defense family is aware of what is happening. And then they then make a submission, we discuss them, then I advise the minister to say, Minister, I think we are ready. This is what we have to realize. So that is in terms of the content. Then in terms of the preparation, ceremonial.
Yes, maybe before you get to the preparations, you spoke earlier on, you said earlier on there could be two note verbals. One just making the request and another one later on coming with details.
Then
Normally, at what or who at DERCO would receive the first note verbal?
the first note verbal ordinarily goes through the bilateral desk. Let me say it's Japan. The Japan desk will receive that note verbal
Yes,
and then make protocol aware
that is the protocol officer.
of DERCO.
Oh, yeah, of DERCO,
Make
yes.
aware that there is this request.
Yes,
Then we go for consultation first before it goes into a facilitation process.
Yes.
To make sure that the minister and the president are okay. Before you go to any preparations,
Yes.
you want to make sure that the principals
Yes.
are on agreement.
Yes.
Once the principals are agreed, and then you trigger ceremonial issues, and then we trigger the content development. Now, the second note verbal may be about the lending rights. It may be containing the word to lend, the type of aircraft, and requesting the flight routes, all those issues. Normally, I saw that thing being dealt by the defense attaché of the mission. Let me say again, is Japan, with the military attaché. He will then trigger that, because now that's where security comes in. That's where the protection of the principal or of the guest. The mode of the route coming, you don't need to expose the route from Tokyo to Johannesburg. So very few people are then aware of the route of the flight, the time of the landing, and the preparations. And then they will then deal with the defense, appropriate defense person, and then maybe person from protocol to be aware. But this is it's not a huge number of people made aware. It's a very restricted because of security sensitivities. Also because there may be the application of the number of arms brought by the protecting party of the guest, the type of arms, serial numbers. So all those things are done very quietly and sensitively. So that might trigger a different one from the global note verbal asking for a visit.
But you would, if it's a visit involving a head of state, you would become aware of the first note verbal quite soon after it has arrived at DERCO, or
That's
not?
right.
It will
Yes.
be quite soon.
I will get almost from the DDG to say, DG, you are in receipt of this.
Yes,
Because my role is to sensitize the minister,
yes,
and then she sensitize the president.
yes, yes,
And so the process to start. So I will be aware of that.
yes, okay, okay. And as the preparations move forward, you would be aware of what's going
I
on
will
and you would be kept informed.
I will keep informed by the relevant
People.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that relates to the arrival of a head of state. What happens when there's ministers visiting the country? Do you get as informed as you are when it's the head of state visiting?
Normally at ministers' level, there are ministers also differs. Minister of Defense, of Intelligence, of DERCO, normally as a different category because of the nature of their work. They
Yes,
get sort of,
some special treatment.
I'm not saying that, I've never said that. I said there is some consideration. There is some consideration given because of the nature of their work.
Yes.
And that consideration means that certain things are done. But maybe if the Minister of Home Affairs come, Minister of Tourism come, it's a different consideration. But still, if that minister come, we still get the note verbal. That note verbal may we request, let me say the minister arrives at Otia. Then protocol will then receive the minister consent from the flight through the protocol launch of DERCO. So you still need a note verbal
Yes,
for that particular minister.
yes,
As long as an executive, you need a note verbal.
okay.
Whatever position or station
Yes.
in the executive, you still need
Yes.
a note verbal.
Okay. And then I must just ask this question. You spoke about 2 note verbals. Now, is the position that there must always be 2? Is the position that there must at least be 1, but sometimes there may be 2?
Chair, it differs.
Yes.
Let me say you receive Hillary Clinton. She travels with a special aircraft.
Yes,
She's not coming commercial.
yes,
So, and again, because of profiling, because all guests are profiled by the state security. They are graded.
Yes.
High
yes.
risk, low risk, medium risk, or it's just Jerry, okay, let him come in. Because, it differs.
But Jerry may be His Excellency.
Well, but Excellency, really with not much risk, because South Africans like that person, there is no
Yeah.
risk. But certain people have risk. We have seen if American head of state arrives, you could see the level of preparation. It's one among the top security. Can see even the amount of American intelligence, amount of American special forces arriving, the type of cars, helicopters, armor, you could see, because it's high risk. Because there are that target. But of course, if the president of the neighboring country comes, you don't see that huge. There is a level. So we are guided by the grading by our intelligence services on the head of state. And accordingly, we calibrate the security arrangements, the rules, what we do, the hotel. It triggers so many other things that happens. If it is a minister from Iran, for example, or minister from these countries that have global attention, you also trigger arrangements. But maybe a minister from Lesotho, we may not trigger such huge arrangements, but there will be security
Yes.
details
Yes.
done. But they all differ
Yes.
depending where they come from.
Yes.
And the protocol also recalibrate its arrangements accordingly. So, but for us, we are led by intelligence services.
Okay.
What is the grading?
Thank you.
But to go back to my question, there are times when one note verbal is sufficient. There are times when two note verbals are required. Or is the second one always optional?
I think for heads of state, normally I think, if I recall very well, to be two.
Yes, yes.
Agreeing this,
Yes.
and then the details.
Yes.
Because whether it's private, whether it's official, ceremonial, state, the security of the head of state of any country
Yes.
is important.
Yeah.
You don't want to answer back something you're not ready for.
Yes.
Because once they land, they are your guests. So their lives are in your hands.
Yeah.
So, and hence the protection around them.
Okay, and I guess that where there is one note verbal, it might contain all the details that you would have expected from a second note verbal in a different case.
Well, in some cases, but as I said, you will understand, Chair, that there are different functions are triggered for preparations.
Yes.
For instance, in the first note verbal, they may not ask for lending rights when they don't know whether we accept
The request.
the request or not.
Yeah, okay.
For instance, if the president flies to UN, like he does every September, the note verbals are triggered by defense attaché with the American State Department. And then we are notified that there is going to be, because of security. So I suggest that maybe the second one is triggered by, yes, we agree, then work on the final details which are not for public consumption.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then you commented then on the report that Ms. Sindane and Dr. Swema and others had prepared, and you deal with your comments on the report from page 4 onwards. And then you comment specifically on what's termed under the post-arrival stage or phase. And you deal with when you first got to know about the landing and the steps that you took. Could you take us through that process, please?
Yes, then. As I said, I only heard this on post-arrival. And in Ms. Sindane's document you are referring to,
Are you looking at FF1? That is Ms. Sindane's bundle.
FF1.
Yes.
FF1.
Yes. What page are you looking at?
I think I'm looking at 2.3.3.
Yes.
That should be, I think, 2.2.3.
Page 19. On top, it would be page 19, is that right? Not,
Let me come there.
I'm sorry. Yes, it would be page 19, 2.3.3 is the bottom page is marked 15.
Page 19.
19 on top, page 19.
Page 19.
Thank you.
This is
Yes.
the first time now,
Yes,
because as the DG of DERCO, I'm also the member of NUCOC National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, principal.
yes.
So that's why we meet to talk about the state security and other issues. So there was a meeting convened for the NUCOC principals on the 1st of May
Yes.
to come, and this is a day after the incidents,
Yes.
to come and discuss this issue because it attracted so much attention.
Yes.
And I'm sure the principals were worried about it. So in preparation for this visit, and having learned that the GCIS cluster, GCIS has called communicators because there was so much media hype, I then invited the then spokesperson, or still the spokesperson of DERCO, Jason Monyela, around 1 o'clock to come and brief me because I wanted to make sure what is happening and what has happened. And then also I called His Excellency Ambassador Kulwane to come and join us at the NUCOC because so much was said about him in the media space. So myself, Ambassador Kulwane and DDG Munyela went to the NUCOC principal. It was extended. Extended means other people who are normally attend are attending. Normally I don't take anybody there. But on this case, it was extended, especially from those departments that are people like implicated, like defense, police, all those people were brought to NUCOC. So we met them at the NUCOC headquarters until time indicated in until 21 hours.
From 4 o'clock until
From
2100 hours.
Non-stop.
Yes.
And then part of the recommendation was to immediately brief our principals. If you see on 20, Roman 1,
Yes.
the general should interact with their ministers and advise against attending the wedding. Recall, we all, like myself, I received invitation. We all received invitations, most of the DJs. And it was going to be, I think, that. So I had to call the minister, Kwana Mashaban, to say, Minister, I want to see you, to brief you about the outcome of the NUCOC meeting. And indeed, the minister consented, and I think 21:30 or 10 p.m., I went to meet the minister. But for the sake of transparency, I also invited Ambassador Kulwane and Mr. Munyela, who were with me at NUCOC, to go and see the minister at her residence to give a briefing of the discussions so that in her mind she really understands the issue very, very well, not only from social media, but that relevant department have reported, Home Affairs have reported, State Security reported, all relevant department. So we met the minister until the early hours of the 2nd of May. When we left home, and we briefed her, and acquainted with some of those recommendations, especially Roman 10, that immediately briefed their ministers. And so that was the time that I heard about, and more the details about this. First time. Second time, the ministers of the JCF's cluster were called to a meeting. The minister went there and accompanied her to go to the cluster meeting where the NUCOC principal presented the report to the ministers for the ministers' processing and ministers' advice. It was in that meeting that the ministers decided to establish the DG's committee
Investigation team.
to investigate the whole thing.
So after then all these meetings, which were interdepartmental, interministerial, then you deal in paragraph C with your call to the High Commissioner of India.
Now, Chair, we're coming to the details now. And part of...
Yes, and I'm wondering, the C you are talking about, Ms. Newman, is, have you changed the files to another one?
I beg your pardon, Chair.
I'm still at page 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've gone back to the statement of
Oh,
Mr. Machila. I beg your pardon.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay, are you, and what page? Are
Page
you at
4.
Page 4.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, that's
Okay.
FF 11. Or is there something that you wanted to refer to in Ms. Sindane's report, Ambassador?
No, I'm following you.
Oh, you're following me. Oh, thank you. Could you go back to your statement then? Page 4 of your statement.
Yes, where are we?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Then you mentioned then after having these meetings with your principals, then you made a call to the
Then-
High Commissioner of India. Could you tell
then-
the chairperson about that call?
Chair, part of our role, all department, was to verify. There was an issue of note verbal. Now, as a NICO principal, now I took over. Then I telephoned the High Commissioner, Excellency, the High Commissioner of India, to establish, because we're not sure who were the guests, who were the people in the aircraft.
yes.
We heard there were ministers, there were officials, there were the family. Because, as I said earlier on, if it was ministers, an issue of protocol preparation kicks in. So I
would
called
have
the-
kicked in much earlier.
Yes, then I called the High Commissioner, Mr. Gupta, who is very different from the Gupta. He's another Gupta. Like you had Machila here, who's another Machila. So, Chair, don't say that Machilas. It's a different Machila. So it's a different Gupta. So, indeed, His Excellency Gupta took my call. I think he may have been to Sun City already at that time. So I asked precisely, High Commissioner, were there ministers in the flight? He says, no, they were not ministers. They were state ministers. Now, Chair, I was ambassador, High Commissioner Secretary to India. State
So you
ministers is the equivalent of our
MECs.
MECs here.
Yes, yes,
Right. Now, MECs have a different category in
Yes.
terms of visits.
yes.
So I then established and informed the NICOC that there was no union minister. They call them union minister,
National minister.
national
also.
ministers.
Yes,
It was provincial or state ministers.
yes.
So that was very, very important because then it goes to the content of the note verbal that was supposed to have been sent. So that is the first call I did to the, but also,
So I'm sorry, but still a note verbal would still have been required, even if it was state ministers, or is that something you are coming
I'm not
to deal
sure
with?
whether state ministers need a note verbal.
Yes, because that,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not a national.
yeah, okay.
Of course, they might be very, very important, but they still, we mind their security to know.
Yes,
their message.
yes, yes.
The second thing that I asked him was, were you asked by the Gupta family to facilitate? He says, no, I was never asked to facilitate. So 2 issues I wanted to get from him. Were these union ministers, national ministers or not? Secondly, you as the High Commissioner responsible, the eyes of the Prime Minister of India, were you approached by the Gupta family to help? He says, no, I was not approached. So I convened that chair to the NICO principals to satisfy ourselves that they were not. He was not approached, and then he didn't set the note verbal. No, there were no union ministers. The second time, if I continue,
Yes.
then I said to him, can you come to my office? I think it was on the 3rd of May. Can you please, wherever you are, can you come to my office
Yes,
for in-depth discussion? Because this was telephone call. So he came to my office.
yes,
And at that time, he could appreciate the gravity of what has happened. And I thought, as a responsible person, and as a fellow diplomat, but also to maintain relations, because you don't want this thing to sour everything. You want to contain it, to make sure that the warm relations between South Africa and India continues, so that this incident is not a cause of the rupture of something that has been built over a period of time, especially the special relations between South Africa and India. Chair, it doesn't have to do with, because I was High Commissioner to India, it's a historic relations that Mahatma Gandhi was here, he's a fan of India, you know, that historic issues. So he came to my office, High Commissioner Gupta, and again I made him aware of what have they followed, the procedures in the Indian High Commission they have followed, especially around the note verbal, that it's unacceptable for us. Something like this has happened under his watch. I didn't ask whether he was aware or not, but I'm sure he may be aware. So the idea of the second meeting was for him to know that the issue of note verbal or no note verbal have caused a major problem. And it's something in South African diplomacy or government that we take very, very serious. Of course, he apologized. He knew it was a very, very serious oversight from his part. Now, oversight is a diplomatic term. They cannot say we failed. So, Chair, you should decode what I say from time to time. I have to stick to my, this is my territory. This is where I earn my living. So, no, can he say I did a mistake? He said it was an oversight, but I can decode to say it was a very, very serious
error or mistake, yeah.
from their part.
But
also,
at that stage, I'm sorry, at that stage I go back to the question that I asked earlier. Now, at that stage when you were speaking to him in the meeting, you knew that there were no national ministers.
He clarified that.
Now, if there were no national ministers and there were, and I'm assuming, and I know that you said you were not sure, assuming that there was no need for, was there a need for a note verbal if it was just state ministers? Because there might be no oversight or mistake to send a note verbal if no note verbal was required. Had you determined that at that stage?
Chair, if this was a real wedding party, it ought to have,
Which it was, isn't
which
it?
it was, it would have landed to in a civilian airport.
Yes,
In that case, it's just a wedding party.
yes.
No need for note verbal. They are coming here to have a nice time. But once you go to a military base,
Yes,
the civilian part goes away, because now you are coming to a very exclusive area, a sensitive security area. So you need to provide documentation why you come to a highly secured area in this way. But we do have a lot of high-profile weddings which are not aware South Africans, because they don't create a hype. We have a lot of people who come and marry here, who come and who are below the radar. It's a lot of high-profile people coming here, but they don't attract attention because it's low profile. So you could have.
But do they go to Waterkloof?
No.
They don't.
They don't go to Waterkloof.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Waterkloof, they can go if it's a requirement
Yeah.
by special arrangements.
Yes, yes.
But it will be such, and it's very few and far apart.
Yes. Okay, I think
thank you.
we'll
Yes,
take
we've-
the short tea adjournment.
Thank you.
Chair, maybe can I finish the last one?
You want to make the last one before we take the
Yes,
adjournment?
because in the same meeting with the High Commissioner, because there were
Yes.
there was
Okay.
those two. The second issue was
Yeah.
the whereabouts of the party. We agreed that the aircraft on the second must go to Otia, and
To
everybody
all Artambo.
or Tambo.
Yes.
Everybody must leave from there.
Yes.
But then we got the reconciliation from Home Affairs that some people are missing,
Yes.
the state ministers.
Yes.
So I said to High Commissioner, where are these people? He said, oh, Ambassador Majila, they chartered a private aircraft to Cape Town.
After landing at
After
Waterkloof.
enjoying in Sun City,
Yes.
they chartered an aircraft
Yes.
to Cape Town.
Yes.
Now I got even more worried.
Yes.
Even if they're state minister, if something happens in Cape Town, we may be blamed as South Africa.
Yes.
We are not certified that they will fly differently. We thought they will come to chartered aircraft and leave the chartered aircraft. Jet Airways. So they went to India. Then I said, but also somebody's missing. Where is this somebody? So we managed to identify the state ministers in Cape Town, and were informed. And what happened, which is true, they left through Emirates via Dubai back to India. So I just want to finish that part.
Yes, yes. No, that's fine. Before we take the adjournment, I just want to ask this question. This was, as I understand the position, an aircraft that was coming to South Africa to bring guests who were going to a private wedding. And some of the people who were said to be included in the aircraft, to be in the aircraft, were state ministers of India. And as I understand it, even they were not going to have any meetings with any government officials, as I understand the position. So their trip had nothing to do with any, their coming to South Africa had nothing to do with any government official. If my understanding in regard to those issues is correct, then it just seems to me that this was a completely private visit for everybody. You could have a situation where maybe, I don't know, state ministers from India are coming to South Africa. They are going to meet some MECs, maybe, I make an example. There's going to be some government business to do, and maybe while they are in South Africa, they will also attend a private wedding. Something suggests to me that under those circumstances, it may be that it might be viewed in a certain way, I'm not sure, but it seems that this was just completely private. They were not going to meet anybody from government and have official government business. And that, for that reason, for all intents and purposes, this was private. Is my understanding correct?
Chair, as we deeper and deeper,
Yes.
it came to transpire that some of them privately also went to, I think, Free State to meet MECs there.
Yes,
But we are not sure because this was cloaked in secrecy.
yes,
We're not
yes,
privy to their programs.
yes, yes.
We just understood that it seems some of them in Cape Town did meet some people in private
Yes.
capacity. Some went to
Yes.
Free State to meet MECs there.
Yes, yes.
But we didn't have any official documentation. It's what we had to say, where is so-and-so, what happened to so-and-so, that actually some of them did meet
Yes,
their counterparts in
Yes.
some provinces.
Yes.
But as DERCO,
yes,
as DG, I was not privy to that.
yes. So in terms of official documents to which DERCO had access or with which DERCO had been furnished, there was no intimation that any of those state ministers were going to meet any official from government. Anybody that might have known anything might have known it on the basis of unofficial sources.
Chair, we are normally guided by the note verbal
Yes.
on the purpose of the
Yes.
visit, what the guests want to achieve, and the facilitation that we do. And then the program is developed.
Yes.
I said it triggered two things, content
Yes.
program
Yes.
and protocol ceremonial.
Yes. Yes.
So we could have been aware, even if it was private, but then is a request that during the privacy, there will be a dinner with so-and-so, and to discuss this. And actually in some private visit, this thing do happen, where head of state meets some, companies, meet some, but we are aware, although it's private. But in this case, as a DG, I had no hint
Yes.
of their actual purpose, who to meet and not who to meet.
And I take it that around the time when you were dealing with this issue, immediately after the landing, you would have been furnished with all relevant documentation that anybody at DERCO had access to.
Precisely.
And therefore you would have known if there was some document that had been given to DERCO that indicated that there was a plan for them to meet some MECs.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, thank you. We'll take the short adjournment and we will resume. It's 25 past. We'll resume at 22:12.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
Thank you.
Commission work. Thank you. Let's proceed. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Ambassador, we were still at page 5. You had finished the part about these guests and the questions that you had put to the High Commissioner of India. And then you deal in that same paragraph with the meeting with the HC, you deal with deviations from normal DERCO processes. Could you just highlight those?
Chair, the deviation was, as I said, after we have gone through, we trigger the issue of interdepartmental meeting. It is that forum that looks into the whole visit and make a recommendation in terms of content to be achieved and protocol services. So that is one thing. But also the bilateral desk needs to assess and says, we agree that this visit takes place. So those were some of the deviations that some of us see in this process. The bilateral desk concern was not engaged fully into the whole process. And so you couldn't advise the executive or the top management of the department to go or not, nor was any interdepartmental meeting convened. So those were some of the deviations that
Yes.
identified.
Thank you. And then, having now gathered the information and having interviewed the High Commissioner of India, what was the recommendation at the end of it all as to what were the steps that had to be taken? And could you just highlight what those recommendations were going to be?
Well, Chair, following the procedures and the outcome of the investigation on this Waterkloof Air Base, then there was an issue of department concern establishing teams to go further. Chair, you'll recall that DERCO belonged to the public service. So Public Service Act guides us, and defense, and they belong to a different dispensation. So once we've gone through this process, and then we're requested that each department carries out. So in DERCO part, we have to see the provision of the public service, SMS handbook, and disciplinary procedures in the department. I'm sure the secret services did their own work, giving their own prescripts, their own guideline, their own constitutional provision. But we have to deal with our own colleagues within the Public Service Act.
Yes. And then, which officials did you then decide to implement those disciplinary charges against?
In the DERCO, the DDG of Human Resources has in his portfolio the disciplinary hearing is part of his responsibility. And so I wanted to sort of distance myself because I was engaged through. So I didn't want to prejudice the colleague implicated. So I said to the DDG HR, who's now happened to be the DG of DERCO, please trigger in the disciplinary procedures. Make sure that you follow the prescripts, you follow everything, and to make sure that the colleague implicated is given the chance to come and appear before the panel. In that context, therefore, Chair, the DDG HR, having this thing as his own portfolio, triggered in disciplinary hearing. Now, in the disciplinary hearing is about the corrective process. Identify, we correct, and rehabilitate. It's meant to be humane-orientated process, especially if the person cannot have a final say. For instance, we don't own any military base. So we look at that we are not the one who have a final say as DERCO. So it's the defense. So we then trigger that process. Then the DDG-HR followed his own procedures, prescripts, came with a submission to me. Identify the relevant people to form the hearing in DERCO. I think in this case it was Advocate M.B. Mutlajwani from the Pretoria Bar to lead this, because we needed somebody from the Graph Fraternity.
Yes, who was going to be disciplined? The person that was going to be disciplined?
In this case, Ambassador Kolwane was identified from the hearing as person to which I should make some disciplinary procedures. And therefore, I then invited the DDG-HR to trigger, to say, look, this application from the hearing, Ambassador Kolwane has been implicated. Can you carry this thing over within the prescripts of the Public Service Act and relevant prescripts, procedures of disciplinary hearing?
Yes. And maybe just to refer you, there would be a bundle exhibit FF3, which contains, it's in a smallish lever arch file, FF3. It contains Ambassador Kolwane's disciplinary proceedings. There is a letter which bears your name in the FF3 at page 3. That will be under the divider marked 1.
Okay. Ms. Norman,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
on which exhibit are we now?
We are on exhibit FF3, Mr. Chairman. I just want to
I
tell
don't seem to have exhibit FF3 here.
maybe they put it behind the chair. It's just a letter of suspension. If the witness may just be allowed to identify it.
I've got
FF3.
exhibits 2A and B,
Yes,
4, 5, 7, 8.
yes.
6, 9, and 10.
3, you said.
Chair, I don't know what happened to it, but the chairperson had it last week, and I had asked that all of your bundles be returned this morning. I just wanted the witness to just simply identify if you.
Just continue.
Thank you.
I may be able
To find it.
do without.
Yes, I apologize for that. Could you please, that letter that.
I think what should be done is every morning, somebody must check from the legal team that everything that
It
I
is
should
here.
have is here.
Yes, Mr. Thank you. Thank you. Page 3, are you there, Ambassador?
Page, I'm trying
3.
to,
On top, it will be VBK 003.
is this file?
If you look at the spine, it will be FF3.
FF3.
Look at the spine of the lever arch file and see whether it's written WF3. Okay, she will help you.
Chair, may I, in the meantime, just hand up a spare copy for you, just
Okay.
so that you can be able to follow.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're looking at
What's the page number that you want?
Page 3, Mr. Chairman.
Page 3 of exhibit
FF3.
FF3.
That's
Okay,
correct.
I saw it, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Did you suspend Ambassador Kolwane?
Yes, ma'am. On the morning of the 2nd, we did,
2nd of May.
of May. Recall in the evening, when you briefed the minister, she said Ambassador Kolwane should be suspended. But you see, bureaucrats are there to assist the executive to do things,
The right way.
that's your saying, is to help to guide.
Yes.
We can understand the sentiment of the minister, but our role is to make sure that things are done appropriately without victimizing anyone. That's why after we had a short sleep, we came back and drafted this.
But you say at that meeting, the minister took this position that Ambassador Koloni should be suspended.
It was early hours of the second.
Yes, okay.
But as an accounting officer, I'm directed by the certain procedures,
And legislation.
legislation. And then also I'm advised by the DDG-HR,
Yes,
who actually happened to came from Public Service Commission,
yes,
on the legality of doing things,
yes,
so that the colleague is not unduly compromised or his human rights are undermined, because he has a right. Recall is an allegation. So with the advice of the DDG-HR, I drafted this letter with husband and then called in Ambassador Kolwane to say, by the way, he was also in the meeting with the minister, but we said we'll follow the procedures. So after I drafted it, I called Ambassador Kolwane to my office and say, Ambassador, we are going to have these procedures followed. I think it triggered the same thing with other departments. Then he looked at the letter and said, Ambassador, you can take it home, consult your lawyers, because he has a right that after a certain date he can say, Ambassador, I'm going to question, I'm going to question this, but after he read it, he applied his mind, Ambassador Kolwane countersigned. But Chair, I understand at that time, I think the media was just too much on him, and I can understand his feeling and his family and everybody. I think there was an over exposure, which I thought was not appropriate at that time because we had no funds. So Ambassador read it. I gave him a chance to do, because I'm required by the law to give him to him, study it, have any legal advice, then signed. So indeed, Ambassador Kolwane, after the discussions, he read it by himself in the premises, then he signed. Then I said, Ambassador, you'll be contacted by the HR, so I'm going to trigger this process.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You may then put aside FF3, Ambassador. Then a disciplinary process, then, as you've already indicated, was embarked upon, which led to Ambassador Kolwane pleading guilty to 3 of the charges without facts and evidence, as we read the record of the proceedings.
Yes, Chair. Then the DDG-HR took over, and I stood back.
yes,
And allow him to do his job per his profile and scope. So DDG-HR, DDG Mahwai, then went to consult, identified appropriate people to deal with the inquiry. As I say, in this case, Advocate MB Matlijwane from Pretoria Bar as identified, and chair. And then we identified Dr. H.N. Manzini from Independent Development Trust to represent the department. And Ambassador Kolwane chose to represent himself. No legal article. So the charges, I want to presume, were read to Ambassador Kolwane. He went to see them. And on the 27th of May, Ambassador Kolwane was served with notice of disciplinary hearing and the received thereof. And then there were 3 charges that were laid. And After the processes by both, I think they met on the 11th, hearing on the 11th, and 22 of July, then the employee, in this case, Abaza Pulani, pleaded guilty to the charges. And again, the parties were given an ample opportunity to present mitigating factors before the chair could issue the sanctions. I think thereafter, then, on the 29th of July, the sanctions were issued and pronounced. Suspension without pay for a period of 2 months as an alternative to dismissal in terms of clause 2.74 of the chapter 7 of SMS handbook, that is the chairperson. And a final written warning, which shall be placed in the employee's personal file and shall remain valid for 6 months. So this is the submission that I got finally at the end, again through the DDG HR, to say I finished my work, DG, and this is the outcome. So my role was to implement the sanctions as such.
And it was indeed implemented?
And they were duly implemented, Chair.
Your role there is important. It was to just implement the, irrespective of what you may have thought about the sanction.
Yes, Chair, because I presumed that they had all the facts at their disposal.
Yes.
Both the Chair and they applied their mind thoroughly. And the HR who did the HR who advised me also, knowing the system and SM handbook and Disciplinary code, they were all satisfied themselves that it's appropriate sanction, given what has transpired. And Chairman was to implement that.
You might not have anything to say about this because your role, as you say, was to implement.
Chair, let me tell you why I implemented.
Yes.
When we started in 1994, and where came few of us in government, we went to DERCO. I think Ambassador Kolwane went to DTI. Very few skillful, knowledgeable people who were not in government came in to try to drive the new government, new policies. Remember, this was 99.9% white establishment in everything. So we needed a highly intelligent, highly knowledgeable, highly skillful and confident and qualified people to go into government to issue transformation. Ambassador Kolwane was one of them. Ambassador Kolwane was sent by the DTI, I think, in Tokyo, and I met him there. Recall, I spent 6 years in my previous life in Japan. It's a very difficult environment because they don't know South Africans. It's very far. They don't even understand English, let alone their culture. So for a diplomat to penetrate the market in Japan, to attract investment to South Africa, you need an extraordinary capable person to do that. Ambassador Kolwane came from that stock, capable young people. And I'm saying this thing because I've been around in this for a long time. And I understand the need, the knowledge of a person. And I'm sure I was the only few South African at that time who understood the Japanese. Actually, Asia. I don't think there was any other South African who understood Asia like I did. So when I went to Japan, because part of my work, Chair, was to try to transform DERCO into new concept of strategic planning, because we found that they were just working. So we're adopting some concept from private sector to make sure that government function efficiently. So we borrow from private sector these functions like strategic planning, annual performance basis. So that was my role. So I used to go all over to train diplomats on the spot about these two concepts. That is when I met some of my old friends in Japan in business bureaucracy. And I found that Ambassador Kolwane, then he was official, in DTI, not in DERCO, was equal to the task. So when we're expanding our footprint in Asia, especially in China, and we're opening up a diplomatic post in Shanghai, is the heart of Chinese economy, I said to the then president that we need somebody who understands business. Shanghai is business. So Ambassador Kolwane was identified from DTI as the head consul general in Shanghai, the one who can effect this, because he had the knowledge of Asia. So, and I must confess, he did an excellent job. Excellent job. New mission, but you could see the investments, you could see the procurement from South Africa. As a result, then Ambassador Kolwane was asked to go to Beijing as a number 2 in Beijing for Greater China. But because of his performance, the president promoted him to be an ambassador and they sent him to Spain. Spain is part of the EU, and as Iberia area, we're trying to reinforce our relationship. So Ambassador Kolwane was then promoted from Consul General, Deputy, to an ambassador in Spain. Now, some of us who see these young people growing over a period of time, of course, you do stumble in life. You know, all of us, we make mistakes. So that's why when I got this report from the commission and understand the totality of who Ambassador Kolwane is, and I saw this, it's a mishap. It could not erase the total picture of his contribution to South African diplomacy and economy. That's why, Chair, I implemented SDR as a corrective way.
The question that I was thinking of asking you, I'm not going to ask you because I think I should reserve it for somebody else other than you. But you do accept, do you not, as a general principle, that there are certain things that if you have done, it doesn't matter how good you are, you may have to go. I'm not talking about this specific matter, I'm just in general. You accept that? In general, not about this case.
In some specific things, yes.
Sorry?
In some areas, yes.
In some areas, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Yes,
Ms. Norman?
yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then, Ambassador, there is a report which appears at page 10 of the same, if you go back, to Exhibit FF11. There is the one that has your affidavit. FF11,
this one.
that one, yes.
Yes.
This is a report which you forwarded to NICOC, but you've already summarized everything. That is your interactions with the High Commission of India and the meetings of the DGs and the ministers. All of that you've summarized in that report.
Yes.
Yes. I just want you to identify it. And the letter which you wrote forwarding it appears at page 9. Is that correct?
No, it is in the file that...
FF11.
FF11 exhibit.
Exhibit FF11 at page 9.
I need technical help from the commission.
Thank you. All right.
Is there some assistant on the commission?
Thank
This
you.
one doesn't have FF11.
FF11? Or maybe it was not put in that.
Page
Doesn't
9.
have- Page 9.
Page 9. I've seen it.
Have you seen it? Yes. That's the letter where you forwarded the report to NICOC.
Indeed.
Oh, yes.
Check.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. That is the evidence
Are you done?
of the ambassador. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming to give evidence and help the commission. Thank you very much.
So, Chair, can I go back to New York? Is that I'm released?
If I refuse your request, what will happen to South Africa in the family of the nations?
Thank you very much.
You are excused. You can go back to New York.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair,
Do you want a short adjournment?
yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll
Thank you.
take a short adjournment before the next witness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you were, those persons testified. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Yes. Now, shall we then just deal briefly with how you got to know about the landing of the Jet Airways at the Waterkloof, the very first time that you were told about it, who told you, and
The request,
and the request
The
itself
request for the landing.
for the landing, yes.
Well, I got the request from the landing for the, to know about the request for the landing was when I got a telephone call from the former High Commissioner of India, Ambassador Gupta, who called me and informed me that they had applied for a flight clearance for landing at Waterkloof, and it's been over 6 days, but they have not had a response, whilst not a few months earlier, they had had the President of India visiting South Africa on a state visit, and it took less than 3 days to get the flight clearance. So he wanted to say to me, Ambassador, can you check for me and follow up to find out what's keeping it for this long? That's the first time that I heard about it.
Yes. So as soon
Or
as...
maybe before we proceed there, maybe let's just hear what your usual role is in regard to requests for visits for heads of state, ministers, or private visits, in terms of what your function was, your job was at the time.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chief of State Protocol, and I'm talking about the portfolio, not the individual, one of the things that is principally your responsibility is the maintenance of cordial relations with all the diplomatic missions which are resident in South Africa. You become the first point of call to South Africa because any person coming to South Africa first interacts with protocol before they can even meet with the political principles. And therefore, in servicing all the diplomatic missions, I get requests that are wide-ranging, ranging from saying, Ambassador, assist us. There are people who park right in front of our embassies, and therefore I have to engage the diplomatic police and say, can you please go and assist the embassy of Singapore is complaining, and they will go and check, and they'll see that maybe they may need to demarcate the area so that it's clearly marked that it's only a diplomatic parking. Or it may also go to the extent of a request for flight clearances coming into the Republic of South Africa. And I think, as was also indicated between Wednesday and Thursday, when we had the testimonies of the people that you have mentioned earlier, there are 3 ways. I think it was stated under oath there as well that such requests may come. They may go directly to the Department of Defense, or they may come through DERCO. I've forgotten the 3rd way that they mentioned. In this, if they come through DERCO, what normally happens is that anyway, normally, as the DG said earlier, I would have known about it because if it's a state visit, during the meeting that is convened by the Director General called the DGF, where all the DDGs sit, we share the programs of work in terms of what's going to be happening. If it's somebody, a head of state from Europe who's coming, for example, they will say to me in the meeting, the DDG in charge of Europe will then report in the DGF and say, by the way, we have a state visit coming from Spain, and the presidency has confirmed availability, and so has the minister. So we've just received the correspondence from them through the note verbal, and we're now going to be sending it to the Chief of Protocol so that we can start triggering the actions. So the initial note verbal doesn't come to me, it goes directly to the DDG dealing with the program area, and then that is actually what happens. And then all we do on our side, we start then interacting with that mission, because once they receive a response from the responsible Deputy Director General dealing with the branch, then they will start writing directly to me, because the response will say to them, the minister has confirmed the availability of the president for the dates that you have requested. Please start liaising with the Chief of Protocol on logistical matters, and they will put my contact details, and accordingly, the mission then will start liaising with us in sending the note verbal requesting the flight clearance. And I would like to also clarify something, maybe to demystify one minor issue about the note verbal. The note verbal they will send to us will contain all the details, as was earlier indicated by both the official from DTI, Machila, not the one who was present today, but the one on Thursday, as well as the gentleman GC from Defense. The details will be what size of a flight is that, how many people on board, who's it of the delegation, etc. So we don't ourselves in protocol draw up a note verbal. We forward that note verbal that we'll have received and say, please find attached in a note verbal that's been sent, etc., etc.
Yes. No, I don't recall anyone saying that DERCO does draw it. Our understanding is exactly the way you put it. DERCO doesn't draw it, but it receives it.
Yeah, I was just clarifying
Yes.
because when I was sitting on Wednesday, in the responses, I had a response saying there will be a note verbal coming from DERCO. So I was trying to clarify that, yes, there will be a note verbal forwarded by DERCO, but not emanating from DERCO as the writer of the note verbal.
All right. Now let's just take this one step at a time. You've just given an answer that the DG would know that there is a request coming from a foreign country. And then the DG then will bring, that particular DG will bring that to your attention.
No, I said the DDG,
The DDG.
who deals with the particular branch.
Yes.
Say in this instance, it will be Asia and the Middle East. So the DDG will then report in the meeting of the DGF that there is going to be this state visit. Even if the DDG, for whatever reason, either is not able to attend the DGF, but his office will at least convey to the office of the Chief of State Protocol that, please note that the DDG asked us to inform you that the President has agreed to the following dates, etc., etc.
All right. Okay, let's talk about this incident then. We know that there was no head of state coming. Is that correct?
Now, yes, I do.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, at the time, what was your understanding of, in respect of whom was the request being made?
When the High Commissioner, as I indicated earlier, that my first time to hear about it was when the High Commissioner of India called me, and I was not in the office when he called. He said to me, we have submitted a flight clearance request for a ministerial delegation coming from India, but we have not had a response. So for me, therefore, I took it that it's a ministerial response.
Yes. No, but then there is no mention of a head of state there, is that correct?
In our discussion, he did not mention anything about the head of state.
Yes. So at that time, when then the request, when this was brought to your attention by the head of state, you knew that there was no head of state.
By
It was
the
just
High
minister.
Commissioner.
By the commissioner, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Mr. Okay, may I just repeat that? When the High Commissioner of India called you, he did not mention that there would be a head of state in respect of the request that he was following up on.
Correct.
Yes. So at what point, if any point at all, did you then get to understand that there would have been a head of state?
I think during the meeting I had with NICOC, they indicated that it was first a head of state, and then it was downgraded to a minister, and then further to an MEC equivalent. But that's information I had not been privy to because the request for such a flight clearance was sent directly to Defense and not to DERCO. Hence, I would not have been privy to that information.
Yes. So then the High Commissioner calls you and says, look, there's been some delays, and we know that usually these things are done quickly. So what was the first thing that you did?
The first thing I did was to call my personal assistant, and I said to her, my dear, I have a challenge. I just got a call from the High Commissioner of India complaining, because that's what he was doing. Can you please follow up with our official who deals with these issues to find out what is the bottleneck? At that time, I was under the assumption that the Indian High Commission had submitted all the documents through DERCO. Hence, my recommendation to my PA to contact the gentleman by the name of Mr. Machila, who works for DERCO.
Yes. So then you said, look into this, you say to a PA, look into this, that's Ms. Morris, is that correct?
Yes,
According to
correct,
the
it's
email.
Ms. Morris.
Is that Ms. Morris?
Yeah.
So you say to her, look into this thing, there's a complaint from the High Commissioner India, they say there's a bottleneck.
I didn't say a bottleneck, man. They just said they
Find
don't
out where the bottleneck is.
Maybe can I rephrase it and state
Yes,
it as I'm trying to express it?
Yes.
I said to her, I received a call from the Indian High Commissioner complaining that they have filed an application for flight clearance, which on average takes 2 to 3 days because a few months earlier they had a visit, a state visit. But this has taken over 6 days, and hence he's AG and wants to find out what is the cause of the delay with the processing of the application.
Yes. So at that point then, when the High Commissioner called you, you also had no idea of what he was talking about?
Correct. I did not have any idea. That was the first time that I heard about the visit.
Yes.
Okay, before we proceed, the information you got from the High Commissioner was that it was a ministerial visit, or there were going to be ministers in the aircraft?
Correct, Mr. Chairperson. He just said to me the ministers who are coming, I don't know when I said 6 or 8, and that they've submitted an application. It's more than 6 days, but they have not had a response.
Yes. On your understanding, would your office or DERCO be involved in anything relating to flight clearances in circumstances where an aircraft might have ministers from another country who are not coming into the country on official business? Would you, DERCO or your office be involved normally in such a case?
I think that will depend on the what they call the threat assessment that will be conducted by the security, because sometimes
Yes.
some ministers come for purely private visit,
Yes.
but because of the threat levels which may be deemed to be too high, then
Yes.
DERCO may get involved in facilitating that they get protectors and things like
Yes,
that.
yes. But if there is no suggestion of any threats, and it's just they're not going to meet any government official or ministers or anybody, it's really a private visit, would your office in DERCO be involved? Would DERCO be involved at all?
At the request stage, Mr. Chair, yes, because if they send the request, if for example, the Indian High Commission sends a request and say, and they're applying for, in the note verbal format, complying with the procedure,
Yes.
but stipulating in the note verbal that this is a private visit, people coming for a private wedding, but it's ministers, can you request defense that you can lend at Waterkloof? We do not have the legal mandate as DERCO to say, sorry, you can't lend, yes, you can. That is the principal domain of defense.
Yes.
So we as DERCO will be like a post office that will take that and
And
process
pass it
it
on.
and pass it on to defense. And then if defense says yes, they say yes. If they say no, they say no. And that's the nature and the limit of our involvement.
Yes. So to some extent, whether the embassy office of the relevant country makes such a request is a factor to be taken into account. But if it does make such a request, even with a private visit, yours is just to pass on the request to the Department of Defense.
Correct, Chair. I can actually provide an example to that effect, which maybe the Chair may also want to verify.
Yes.
The mother of the King of Eswatini has landed on a few occasions at Waterkloof on a private medical visit, coming for private medical reasons. So all we do is just process as to what criteria they use to allow her to land or not to land is fundamentally the responsibility of defense. So ours is just to process, and we are like a post office, a conduit, if one may use the word, of interaction between diplomatic missions and defense when it comes to request of landing at Waterkloof. And I mean, I'm sure the chair will agree that the mother of King of Eswatini is neither a public office bearer, a politician, or head of state. But I'm saying she has landed not once at Waterkloof. But again, if you were to ask me, Chair, sitting here, what criteria was utilized to decide that she can land, I wouldn't be able to answer because, like I said earlier, that is the principal domain of the Department of Defense.
And is that the case whether it's a state visit, official visit, or private visit? Namely, the people who must decide in the end whether they allow the landing of an aircraft falling under those categories is the defense force.
Correct. If the request is to land at Waterkloof, Chairperson, because it may be that they are doing a renovation of a runway. So I will not have that knowledge sitting in DERCO, so they are the only people who can know whether all their systems are up to date, everything is good for them to accept the size of the aircraft, etc. So whilst DERCO and the presidency may agree to receive a particular head of state on a particular date, but the decision to land in Waterkloof will not reside with the president or the minister of DERCO either. It will depend on the availability of Waterkloof, and the only people who will know about the availability, the size of the aircraft, etc., will be the people who are given that mandate constitutionally, which is the Department of Defense.
Would the difference be that if it is a state visit or official visit, the DERCO and your office would have had certain roles to play in order to make sure that South Africa played its role if that visit happens?
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, as was earlier also indicated, if it is a state visit, I will then also coordinate an interdepartmental meeting.
And the state visit is only one which involves head of state.
It can be the head of state or the deputy head of state
Yes,
as well.
okay.
In some, whether it's the president or the prime minister
Yes.
or the king, depending
Yes.
on
Yes.
the form of governance in a particular country.
Yes,
In that
that is-
instance, I personally will call a meeting, an interdepartmental meeting, which will include, amongst others, SAPS, particularly the Presidential Protection Services team. I will call people from, if maybe DTI, if there are trade ministers coming, I will call them, but normally we'll call people from Home Affairs, we'll call people who are dealing from the intelligence sector as well, who deals with the issue of accreditation, to make sure that they will address issues related to accreditation, that they will also make sure that they put together a security strategy and plan, identifying the routes, because as we work on the program and we know which meetings are going to be taking place and where, we need to decide on the best logical route to take given the traffic. We then get also people from the metropolis to come in because we'll also request some escorts. So yes, we get extremely involved because it's a head of state meeting that's going to be happening, but only in as far as dealing with and organizing the logistics and not the substantive component of the visit by the head of state.
Okay. Yes, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then let's talk about then your secretary would have made inquiries. What did you discover? Did she report back to you as to what she discovered?
Yes, she called me and said the gentleman from DTI doesn't seem to know anything because they haven't sent anything to him. He has not received anything. And I called the ambassador of the High Commissioner of India and I said, there doesn't seem to be anything. And said, oh, we actually sent it directly to defense. And again, I assume, like I said earlier, that a few months earlier they had had a state visit, that they had submitted all documentation as per the previous exercise. And I then asked, because I didn't have the number, I didn't even know the name of the person. I then asked to be given the number and the name so that I could call, like I do also call other government departments when there are issues to make inquiries.
Yes. And then who did you then call?
I called, is it Mr. Nchisi?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So at that point when you were calling Mr. Nchisi, you had not had sight of any documentation?
I had not. I was just acting purely under the assumption that there's been total compliance with the administrative requirements in terms of documentation that must be submitted, etc., because a few months earlier they had had a visit of their head of state, and they had complied fully to the extent that they had been granted the flight clearance to land at Waterkloof.
Yes. So then what did you convey to Warrant Officer Nchisi at the time he was a warrant officer?
I then said to him, please, sir, can you help, because this High Commissioner is on my case, can you please process this application?
At that point, you had not had any documentation with you? You had not had sight of any application?
I was out of my office. Although I cannot, as you will imagine, it was more than 6 years ago, I could not recall exactly where I was, but I was not in the office, so I was only dealing with this by phone. I had not seen any documentation whatsoever.
Yes. You've already told the chairperson that you have no powers over defense. I'm just trying to understand the basis upon which then, without any documentation at your disposal at the time, would you then have to ask Warrant Officer Nchisi to process the application? I just want to understand the basis upon which you did that.
Okay. As I indicated earlier, if an embassy of Singapore complains that there are people who are parking right in front of their embassy where they are supposed to be parking, because according to the Vienna Convention provisions, we need to give them at least 2 bays where they can park their official cars. If they complain that there are people parking there all the time because they're not demarcated, I call the diplomatic police, although I don't have power for decision-making, but I call them and I say, please, can you attend to this problem, because it's going to create unnecessary diplomatic tensions, since my responsibility is to ensure that we have got cordial relations, and I'm the conduit. And in fact, when they arrive and I receive them before they hand their credentials, I explain that if you have any problem whatsoever, irrespective of which department, protocol dictates that you come through me, and I will facilitate that you have somebody attending to the matter. Equally, with calling defense, I understand fully that I don't have authority over officials working for defense. But to request that they process should not be an issue, because all I'm saying is process. I'm not saying issue or not. Processing is, can you address or attend to this business, because it's creating unnecessary problems.
Yes. What did Warrant Officer Nchisi say to you when you said to him, please process this application?
I think
Well, maybe let's start with the question whether when you phoned him, he was aware of the application as at that time, as far as you recall? Or was he hearing about it for the first time from you?
No, I think he already was aware of the application.
Okay.
That's the impression that I got.
Yes, okay, all right.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then, what did he say to you then? If he was aware, or the impression you got was that he was aware of the application, and you said to him, please process it, what was his response?
Although I cannot accurately say I can recount his words verbatim, but I think he said something to the effect that I think there was no note verbal attached or something like that for him to be able to go ahead and do all the necessary processing that is necessary.
Yes. And then what was the discussion among the two of you?
Although I don't recall, like I said, every single thing we discussed, but all I remember saying was it was standard approach I used with everybody, irrespective of government department. I will say to them, if there's an issue with the application, revert back to the embassy or the High Commission so they know what the issue is. But because keeping quiet for 6 days is just not healthy for our standing in terms of how these countries must look at us.
Yes. In the end, what was the understanding between you now and Major Nchisi?
I am not sure I understand
In
what you
the
mean.
understanding, you had made the call to him to process it. Did he report back to you that now we've processed?
Or maybe before that,
Yes.
maybe you can just tell me the full conversation that the two of you had, accepting that it's quite some time back that this happened, but also accepting that you have had access to documents and reports, I think, of what different people may be saying happened, and I assume even with regard to Mr. Nchisi's own version. If you can just tell me, this is my recollection of what transpired during that conversation.
Correct. According to my recollection, Chair, as I indicated earlier, mine was to say to him, please, can you make sure you expedite processing the flight clearance application you have received from the Indian High Commission? And again, I want to stress the word processing the application. And he indicated that there were documents missing. And I asked which ones. He said, I think one of them is a note verbal. And I said, please just check everything that's not in order and revert back to the embassies rather than sitting for 6 days and not going back to them so that you can address the matter. I think in essence that was actually what transpired. And I'd also, I think he called my PA or my PA called him thereafter, I'm not sure. But and also I'd asked my PA to convey the same thing, that I actually want to see that this matter is processed. And I take note of the email that my PA sent, which I think was either a misunderstanding on her side or maybe a failure on my side to present it the way that she could understand it properly, because the email she sent subsequently said, Ambassador Kolwane approves the issuing of the flight clearance. Obviously, I have got no authority, Chairperson, because I think if you think about this, there are certain things that must be met to be able to issue a flight clearance. One of them is that you must be able to have access to civil aviation information. Otherwise, if anybody can just issue that, bodies will be falling from the skies because planes will be crashing. So I don't have access to that. So I cannot issue, because when you issue, you have to issue coordinates, etc., that people must utilize when they take off or when they arrive for landing or even en route coming to South Africa. I don't have access to that information. I don't know if the Department of Defense will be having a ceremony or an event on that particular day. I cannot know that. So that's why I say it's either a misunderstanding on her side or maybe my failure to explain it properly to her, because we had a very short discussion with her, that all I want is to see this matter being processed, which is my responsibility to make sure that it's processed. As to whether the answer is yes, we issue, or no, I will convey whatever answer comes, because I cannot. And also particularly given that one of the most notorious government departments for following protocol stringently is the Department of Defense. So I will not. I mean, I had been doing this, this work of facilitating flight clearance through my team, of course, not directly myself, for over 2.5 years. And therefore, I was alive to the realities in terms of procedures and processes that I had no legal mandate whatsoever to dictate to any government department. Even when we had an interdepartmental meeting, I could not dictate to the police, although I was the chair of the meeting. I will say to them, I know you have a role to play to provide security. What is your plan? Have you identified people? Who are the names so we can put them in the list? But I did not ever give myself powers that I never have, because I knew my limitations in terms of the statutes, and there is no way I would have actually given instruction that I order an official from another department to issue, when also there are processes, horizontal processes in that department that must be followed. So, and furthermore, I would just like to state for the record as well, Chair, that I even further said to my PA, please make sure that the following people are also copied, so that because I'm in a meeting, they can also follow up. And the Director of State Visits, that was referred to earlier on Wednesday, or Thursday, Ms. Grace Mason, you will note is copied on that email, and somebody else as well. I think Ms. Lowe said there are 2 people copied who are senior managers. So if I was off an agenda to do something dubious, why would I say let's copy some senior managers within protocol who know exactly what process must be followed? I think for me there was purely an issue of either I failed to get across to her properly, or it was either an issue of pure misunderstanding.
Sorry. Then in your interactions with Warrant Officer and GC, did he ask you for anything in writing or something in writing?
No, he didn't. And then I got a call from my...
I'm sorry, shouldn't we go to that letter from the PA, or do you
Yes.
want to deal with that later?
No, I wanted, I can go to it, Chair. It's at page 199 of exhibit, that's what, FA8. FA8. FF4. at page 199, Exhibit F4. Ambassador, you'll find it's that big lever H file next to you.
FF4.
Yes, could you just look at the spine of that? Is that FF4?
Yeah.
Thank you, okay.
Did you say page 199?
Page 199, yes. Thank you. It will start from, so you have 198. Yes, this is from, you've already identified Ms. Morris as your secretary at page 199, and that's dated the 9th of April, 2013.
Yeah.
Yes, and you mentioned somebody who had been copied there?
Yes. CC, Ms. Mason.
Yes.
Ms. Mason was the director of state visit, who would be the person in the event of a minister coming, who will then appoint protocol officers that will take care of that business. Ms. Sally Ramukhopa was my deputy chief of state protocol at the time.
Yes. And then what does Ms. Morris convey to these people?
As I stated earlier, she says,
You can read the letter,
Yes.
the
Yes.
email.
he says, Ambassador Kolwane has telephonically approved the request.
He is writing to?
He's writing to William
Yes. Yes.
That is Mr. William Machila.
Machila.
Yes. What does it say in the email?
I repeat, she says, Ambassador Kolwane has telephonically approved the request.
No, there's something else there. Could you just read the entire email, please?
Oh, as per your discussion with Ambassador Kolwane with regard to the request for flight clearance and landing at Waterkloof, AFB, for the Indian delegation, kindly note that Ambassador Kolwane telephonically approves the request.
Yes. Now, if she says Ambassador Kolwane has telephonically approved the request, what request would that be?
Again, like I stated, I only said that I authorize that they follow up to make sure that this whole application is processed. But that's why I'm saying it either must have been a misunderstanding on the side, because I'm not the one who drafted the email, but the orders or the instructions I could only give, given my mandate, is to say to them, can you please follow up and check what's happening, or can you push that they process this thing so we can give the response, irrespective of what the outcome of the processing will be.
Now, let's take a situation where, let's say, it's a head of state from another country who has applied or requested to land, all right? And that request is sent to DECO. There is nothing wrong about it, and you as DECO, all the processes that you said you follow, you would have followed, and you're quite comfortable. You've checked with the presidency, as you would say, you've checked with the minister, and you're comfortable that that aircraft should be allowed by defense, if it's defense, to land. Would you, in those circumstances, say DERCO is comfortable and DERCO approves the landing?
The answer is no, ma'am. Like I said earlier, DERCO does not have any legal mandate whatsoever to determine whether any flight can land in Waterkloof or not. All we do, we are like a conduit, a facilitator for passing applications to defense, and then defense will decide, like I said, because they could be renovating the runway or anything like that. So DERCO cannot, including the Minister of DERCO, cannot authorize that the plane lands in Waterkloof. All we do, we really facilitate that information be moved from the diplomatic mission to defense.
Yes. When did you discover for the first time that your secretary had sent this letter or this email to Mr. Makila?
I don't remember, but it was quite some time later. I do not recall. I think, in fact, I might have only learned of it when the NICOC investigation had started, if I remember well.
Yes. And then when you then discovered that there was this investigation and now your secretary had issued something like this, what steps did you take?
I didn't, ma'am, because it was post the landing phase, and also, as was earlier indicated by Ambassador Machila, on that same following day, the minister had taken a decision that I be suspended from the department so that I will not interfere or tamper with potential witnesses. So any direct engagement with her would have constituted if you like, tampering with evidence. Albeit, I wasn't happy with the manner in which I was suspended because in terms of the public service prescripts, I should have been given 7 days to write back to tell her why I don't think I should be suspended, and that was not done. As you can see from the letter that Ambassador Machila showed earlier of the 2nd of May, it was exactly a day after, and the letter was given just like that. And I did indicate when I accepted the letter that only because I want to cooperate, I will accept it, but I believe that my rights are being violated again.
Yes. Now, let's deal with that. Before we deal with the rights, insofar as suspension is concerned, I just want to understand, because from what you've told the chairperson, the very first time you got to hear about it it's when this High Commissioner called you about it, and you would not have been involved in anything else that was intended to either facilitate this lending or in any way that would be seen to be you having tried to assist, other than the call that you made to Waterkloof Sanctions.
I assume we are talking about the request for the ministerial plane, for the alleged plane carrying ministers that was requested to lend at Waterkloof.
Yes.
No, nothing else.
Nothing else. Okay. What else would I be talking about?
I think it's from the reports, it's common knowledge that I was invited to a meeting at OR Tambo International Airport, wherein there was then former Minister Ben Dikobe Martins, and there was the CEO of AXA, and myself, and there was Mr. Gupta there, and they wanted to request landing at OR Tambo International Airport. So the minister wanted to get an advisory opinion from both the CEO of AXA and myself, because they had also requested the use of the diplomatic lounge at OR Tambo, and the OR Tambo falls under the management of the Chief of Protocol. The protocol lounge also falls under the management of the Chief of State Protocol. So I had to come and provide an advisory. And I did advise in that meeting that I don't think it's going to be viable. I don't think it will work because it's also used by our own political leadership, our executives, as well as diplomatic missions. So therefore, I advised against that. And so did the CEO of AXA, who also equally advised against, arguing, if I remember well, although again it's some time back, but I think his argument gravitated towards saying we have got regular clients that keep our business going. We can't chase them away only to accommodate you for a 1 or 2 day event. And the Minister of Transport said, I take your advice, and he advised them accordingly that, sorry, on the basis of this advice, you can't land at Waterkloof. And we then further went beyond that during that meeting and recommended that they may want to contemplate approaching private airports like Pilanesberg and what is the other one called? Lanseria Airport. And we thought the matter was dead.
Yes. So then
I'm sorry. In relation to the call you received from the High Commissioner,
Yes, sir.
And the meeting that you have just talked about, which happened first?
The first meeting was the meeting that was called by the Minister, Ben Dikobe Martins, who was then Minister of Transport.
Yes.
And then it was like the matter died for some time.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, nobody followed up, so the matter they must have been sorted out either at Pilanesberg
Yes.
or Lanseria, as per the recommendation that we had made in the meeting.
Yes. That happened before you got a call from the High Commissioner of India.
Correct. The call from the High Commissioner of India, Chair, was made to me after they had already submitted the application to the Department of Defense, and definitely
Yes.
long after the meeting that we had had at OR International Airport.
Oh, okay, all right. Now, at the OR Tambo meeting,
Yes, sir.
we've been told about a number of people who attended. Then Minister Ben Martins was there.
Correct.
You were there.
Correct.
I think
The CEO of AXA
CEO of AXA.
and Mr. Gupta was also there.
Was it Mr. Tony Gupta who was there, or was it another brother of the...
I think it was Tony Gupta,
Tony
although
Gupta.
although I might be mistaken.
Yes, yes. I take it that at that meeting, Mr. Gupta gave full information of what this was, all of this trip or this visit, this landing that they wanted at OR Tambo was about.
Chair, I'm not sure whether full information will be appropriate, but he gave some information which I think
Yes.
was critical
Yes.
for the minister to consume in order to be able to make a
Yes,
decision.
yes.
And one of the things he did say categorically is that there was going to be a wedding and that there were guests that he's expecting to come. And some of those guests will be ministers, and there might even be one of the vice presidents coming. And that's why he was requesting the use of the protocol lounge. And that
Okay.
is how that part came in.
Yes, okay, okay. So that's the information that was revealed. One, it's a wedding. Wedding. Two, there would be some ministers or maybe some ministers.
He actually said there will be some ministers,
Oh, he
Chair,
said there will
and
be
there
some-
may be a vice
There
president.
may be a vice president.
Correct. And also
Yes.
that they would have liked to get an area where they could have a cultural performance to welcome and receive the special guest as they were
Yes,
presented.
yes. And as you understood the conversation at that meeting, was this cultural reception or welcome ceremony, was it supposed to happen on the tarmac of the airport near where the aircraft would have landed, or is that a detail that you can't remember?
I wouldn't remember that level of detail because my principal focus was on the matters dealing with protocol, but I do recall that the CEO of AXA did say something, and again, I'm not quoting him verbatim. I want
Yes.
to stress that, but he did say something along the lines of, look, that is a very busy time. We're dealing with a lot of processing of immigration, etc. So we can't just take our regular clients that come to us and use the support every day and put them aside for you who are coming for a one-day event. So it's going to be disruptive, and that's why we cannot support it.
Yes. Okay. I see we are 2 minutes or so past one.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
We are going to take the lunch adjournment. We would normally take an hour-long lunch adjournment, but there is some urgent commission business that I have to attend to. So I'm going to adjourn until 3 o'clock to attend to that urgent commission business.
Yes, Chair.
And then we will resume at 3.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, we adjourn.
Thank you.
One, two, one, 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 one. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2. Ludwig. Wait, I want to set it for me so that you can see what. Sawala, come.
Are we grabbing cutaways of him on that side? Yeah. Please. Is there anything we ever get the side or the back of his head here?